The story begins in the year 1937 in Minya Governorate with the girl Enshra Musa. Enshra was born into a middle-class family, but she always dreamed of being in a place different from where she was and was never satisfied with her situation, despite the fact that her father broke the traditions of Upper Egypt by educating girls and decided to let her learn. Enshra entered school until the year 1951, and after obtaining her preparatory certificate, her father Musa decided to reward her for her effort and took her with him to a relative's wedding in Cairo. Despite being only 14 years old at the time, Enshra was a beautiful girl with entirely feminine features and a figure that attracted everyone's attention. The first person who noticed her was Ibrahim Said Shaheen, who, according to reports, was of Palestinian origin and lived in the city of Ari. Ibrahim was born in 1929 and was working as an accounts clerk at the Arish district office. Ibrahim Shaheen studied until the preparatory certificate like Enshra. On the day of the wedding, Ibrahim was mesmerized by Enshra's beauty and decided that he wouldn't leave the wedding without knowing everything about her. On the other hand, the moment Enshra saw him, she admired him and wished to be with him, dreaming of the day he'd be her husband. She believed in her feelings, and one day Ibrahim knocked on the door asking for her hand. Enshra was very happy, but her joy was short-lived after her mother completely rejected her marriage in Arish, which was considered very far from Minya. But when Musa, her father, saw her desire to marry Ibrahim, he agreed, and Enshra Musa got engaged to Ibrahim Shaheen. This was the beginning of a story that was neither expected nor imagined. After a short while, Ibrahim married Enshra, and they moved to Arish. According to reports, neither of them had completed their education, and so they agreed that when they had children, they would ensure they study until they graduate from university. This became their dream, for which they worked hard even before having children. Enshra and Ibrahim loved each other very much, to the extent that their love was well known among family, friends, and relatives. After 3 years of marriage in 1955, Enshra gave birth to her first son, Nabil, and then a year later, she had her second son, Muhammad. In 1958, Enshra gave birth to her last child, Adel, and Ibrahim and Enshra achieved their dream of providing their children with the best education. Therefore, in 1963, they sent their 3 children to their uncle in Cairo to study and experience the life that Ibrahim and Enshra wished their children to live after spending their lives among the Bedouins and in the countryside until the moment everything changed in 1966, after the situation became tight for Ibrahim and his salary was no longer enough to support his children's education and living in Cairo. He decided to accept a bribe from someone in exchange for providing him with his interest. But unfortunately, he was caught for what he did and was imprisoned for 3 months. After he got out, he found himself fired from his job and saw the harsh reality of life until 1967, specifically in June, when Israeli forces occupied the Sinai Peninsula and took control of it entirely. The cities of Sinai, including Arish, were closed off, and its residents were trapped inside. There was no food or water coming in or out, and most people were no longer working, and the regular means of livelihood ended to the extent that people could no longer afford to buy tea due to lack of money. Ibrahim didn't know what to do. Enshra was scared for her children, whom she left in Cairo, and she couldn't sleep due to the nightmares she was having, with her children calling for her and screaming in fear. Ibrahim tried to reassure Enshra, but he himself was worried and scared as he looked at his beautiful wife, who was crying instead of shedding tears for her children and their situation. Ibrahim decided to submit a request to the Israeli military governor, whose name, according to report, was Officer Naim. Ibrahim continued to submit requests for permission to leave Arish several times, but the occupation army was delaying the people of Sinai to exert more pressure on the government. According to reports, Ibrahim burst out in front of the officer, saying that he lost his job and money and there was no food for him or his wife. Officer Abu Naim reassured him, saying that he would try to expedite his permit. Ibrahim felt that Abu Naim might sympathize with him if he got closer, so he tried to ingratiate himself with him in order to help him with the permit. Indeed, Abu Naim liked him and decided to give him a sack of flour, bags, sugar, and tea. Ibrahim returned to his wife happy and informed her that they would be traveling to Cairo soon. Enshra's joy at the good fortune that came to her was overwhelming. She kept waiting for the permit that would reunite her with her children. However, days passed and there was no news, and each time Ibrahim went to see the officer, he returned with a sack of flour, sugar, and tea, which became their only source of sustenance. Ibrahim and Enshra almost starved like many people from their town, until one day Ibrahim was surprised by being summoned from Abu Naim's office. Ibrahim was happy and quickly went to Abu Naim, and the military governor received thanks for the vision that Abu Naim get from him. In reality, he was not as nice Ibrahim and Enshra remembered. Just as Ibrahim tried to play him, friend him, Abu Naim was actually able to study and realized that he was pliable, able to be molded to suit their interests. Ibrahim heard the news he had been waiting for a long time and learned from Abu Naim that the military governor had approved travel permit him each, but the conversation finished. Abu Naim informed governor one which Ibrahim didn't stand Abu which Abu Yaqub asked Ibrahim to travel with him to Beersheba, to the main office responsible for the children of Sinai. Ibrahim indeed traveled to the office and told Enshra that he would just complete the procedures there and return to her quickly. In the office, Ibrahim was received with strange suspicion. He clearly understood his mission of betraying the homeland and passing on Egyptian secrets to the enemy, and he received the first payment of money, which was $1,000. According to the news, Ibrahim had never dreamed of such an amount, especially at a time when he didn't even have enough for a pack of cigarettes. Ibrahim underwent an intensive training session where he learned to write with invisible ink, how to gather information from his relatives and friends, and how to distinguish between different planes and weapons. He was also trained on how to tell political jokes, insult the government and the army, and how to spread rumors that could affect the general state of the country. Ibrahim also practiced the interrogation he would undergo in Cairo as soon as he arrived, and they taught him how to respond to all questions calmly. Ibrahim passed the course successfully to the degree that the trainers were impressed with him and promised that he would be protected along with his family wherever they went because they had eyes everywhere. Ibrahim decided to volunteer information in order to get a larger reward and pointed them to a hidden Egyptian fighter in Sinai. Ibrahim returned home feeling happy and reassured, bringing gifts and a lot of money with him. Enshra was surprised and asked him where all this money came from. He admitted to her that he had informed the Israelis about a hidden fight. Enshra was silent for a moment, but after seeing the money in front of her eyes, she told him that either way they would have found his location. Ibrahim asked her if that meant he was not a traitor, and she replied that he was not a traitor or anything, and anyone else would have reported the information and taken the reward. Ibrahim felt relieved by his wife's agreement with his plan and confessed to her that he would help him when he traveled to Cairo. Enshra was shocked, and according to the news, she placed her hands on her heart and said, "Oh, black day, Ibrahim, how can you help?" He told her that he would inform them of the prices of vegetables and fruit, and that every letter he sent them, he would receive $200. Enshra was happy with the amount, but still feared what might happen to them if they were discovered. But Ibrahim reassured her, saying that he wasn't working and that he had no source of livelihood other than this, and because of the money they would get, it would secure them and their children. He insisted that the information he would provide was very simple, since he was a civilian, did not know military secrets. Enshra agreed, but on the condition that he let her read every letter before he sent. Ibrahim agreed. On November 19, 1967, Ibrahim and Enshra arrived in Cairo with the International Red Cross, which provided him with free accommodation in the Mataria district, and he also returned to his job after the offices were moved from Al Arish to Cairo. Ibrahim settled with Enshra and rejoined with their 3 children. Ibrahim decided to move his entire life to the Amiria neighborhood, which is considered one of the most popular areas in Cairo. From there, Ibrahim learned that he could gather information from his neighbors and from work, and Enshra helped him preparing the place he would write with invisible ink. She was also rephrasing the sentences to make them better until she decided to reveal herself in one of the letters in exchange for a reward. "I will stay too," and at the end of each letter there was a sentence long long live Greater Israel. Ibrahim was afraid that the wealth started to show on him and his family would be visible to people while he was just a poor government employee. So he decided to start trading in clothes, electrical tools. Due to the money that had started to come in, Ibrahim began to bribe people in his office and with money and gift to avoid going to work and to spend most of the week gathering more information and sending it in his secret letter. Ibrahim's letters were addressed to Rome, and due to the amount of letters and the information that Ibrahim collected, he was summoned to Rome along with Anshra. So Ibrahim decided to travel first to Lebanon under the pretext of business and from Lebanon to Rome. In Rome, Ibrahim and Anshra met a representative from Mossad who handed them 2 Israeli documents that allowed them to travel to Israel, and their names were changed exactly as they start, becoming Dina Omar and Musa Omar. The 2 entered Israel for the first time, where they were received warmly and stayed in a villa they could never have imagined living in. They remained there for 8 days, during which they took an intensive training course in photography and information gathering and learned about different types of aircraft and weapons. Ibrahim received the rank of colonel in the Israeli army, while Anshra received the rank of first lieutenant. Ibrahim and Anshra met high-ranking leaders in the Israeli army, so Anshra decided to exploit the situation and requested a second reward for herself because she and Ibrahim worked hard in gathering information, and one reward was not enough for both of them. Indeed, Anshra succeeded in getting thousands of dollars and returned to Egypt. After that, Ibrahim began his mission of gathering information and started befriending military personnel and holders of sensitive positions, hosting them at his home. While they were all drinking together, Anshra used her wealth and femininity as she insulted the Israeli enemy and cursed them, so the officers felt comfortable with her, sensing her patriotism, and shared military secrets and the army's intentions with her. With the onset of the War of Attrition, immediately after the setback, Ibrahim and Anshra began their role in assisting Israel more actively. During this period, the Egyptian army was showcasing its military weapons and tanks along the Suez Road. So Ibrahim and Anshra told their children that they were traveling on a trip to Alexandria. Throughout the journey, Anshra photographed the weapons and tanks, and they also visited military installations and took pictures to send to Mossad until Ibrahim and Anshra became greedier and decided to involve their children in betraying their country. According to the Israeli newspaper Al-Ma'arif, which published the conversation of Adil, son of Ibrahim and Anshra, in 1997, the son Adil narrated the fateful day when he discovered what his father and mother were doing. In 1971, Ibrahim and Anshra returned from Rome with expensive gifts and elegant clothing, and they were looking at each other with strange glances. Adil realized that something strange was happening until Ibrahim and Anshra sat in front of their 3 children, and Ibrahim began his speech by saying that their current situation was not from their trade or their work, and they had never dreamed of it. According to the news, Ibrahim told them that he did not have even the value of a loaf of bread and could not have come out of Sinai to see them, but there were people who loved them very much, and they were the ones sending them gifts and money, the Israelis who saved them from poverty and hunger. At that time, Adil was 14 years old, his brother Muhammad was 15, and his older brother Nabil was 16, which means that Ibrahim and Anshra decided to involve their children who were not yet of legal age. Adil did not understand the idea that his father was working with the Israelis. According to the report, he was just like any child raised with hatred towards Jews and defenders, but at home, the upbringing was completely different. For them, the Israelis were responsible for their food and drink. Over the years, the 3 of them grew up and understood the meaning of working with Israeli Mossad, which would ultimately lead to a noose. The family of Ibrahim and Anshra transformed from an ordinary Egyptian family to a family of treacherous spies. Anshra felt the value of what she was doing, and as usual, she felt she deserved a better future. So she decided that Ibrahim should buy a villa in Nasser City for them to live in. Due to the shift they had made, Ibrahim was able to expand his network of acquaintances among military personnel and pilots, and his house turned into parties and gatherings throughout the week. From here, he and Anshra began to gather as much much information as possible, and Nabil began to write in place of his father with invisible ink and prepare the letters and also take pictures. According to the Israeli newspaper Al Ma'arif, Adil narrated that they were photographing factories, identifying their location, and Ibrahim was also measuring the number of kilometers between each factory and documenting everything in detail. Their luxurious life continued until one day they saw a film about the execution of an Israeli spy, and fear and terror entered the heart of each of them. Ibrahim fell into a state of shock, in a state of collapse, and refusing to continue writing letters and reports. After more than a week had passed, Enshra decided to travel to Rome herself to deliver the films she had and was hiding in wooden artifacts. Enshra arrived in Rome and met there with Abu Yaqub, and after she handed him the films, she asked him to stop working because she and her family were scared, and Abu Yaqub's tension and anxiety made it clear that he didn't want to lose important spies like Ibrahim and Enshra. He decided to invite Enshra to a nightclub so she could stay up and forget her worry. Enshra drank until she woke up one day and found herself in Abu Yaqub's arms and was shocked by herself, but then she remembered the night she spent with him and decided that instead of only being unfaithful to her country, she would also be unfaithful to her husband and herself, forgetting her desire to end her espionage work. At the end of September 1973, Enshra traveled again to Rome, and every time she traveled, Abu Yaqub would follow her so she could spend days and nights with him and then return to her husband as if nothing had happened. Abu Yaqub was exploiting Enshra, and every time he sent a summons, he only asked for her to show up. This was to ensure that things went smoothly without Ibrahim. The relationship continued until just before the October victory, when Abu Yaqub met Enshra and told her that the Egyptian army had attacked Israel and that they didn't have much time, and that Israel was being wiped off the face of the earth. Abu Yaqub cried, and Enshra cried with him while trying to console him about Israel, which the Arab would put down. In April 1974, Enshra traveled with Ibrahim and her 3 children to Turkey, where Abu Yaqub summoned Ibrahim to Sinai, and there Ibrahim received the latest wireless device in the world, which according to reports was worth over $100,000 because they were afraid of Sadiq al-Shazli's team, who wanted to escalate the war and take back Sinai at any cost, even if it meant crossing borders, unlike President Saddam, who wanted a limited war that suited their capability. According to the report, the leaders of Mossad promised them any information about be worth $1 million. Enshra learned to wire, but she was afraid wouldn't be able to take it through the air, so the leaders decided smuggled device each her knowledge. Ibrahim and Enshra moved to a spot at kilometer 108 on the Cairo-Suez Desert Road, and there they found a water tank that was unusable, and behind a broken concrete wall. They dug inside and found the device. Enshra returned with her husband and her 3 children, and they spent 3 days testing the device they had trained to use, but they discovered that the power switch broken due to the dig. Without hesitation, Enshra offered to travel to Israel specifically to get a key. In reality, Enshra wanted to go to Abu Yaqub and took the key as an excuse to travel. Enshra traveled to Abu Yaqub. During this time, Ibrahim was testing the device, send the first message to Mossad, but at that time, the Egyptian army had a Soviet invention called the wave catcher, which helped them locate Ibrahim, and with Ibrahim's repeated attempts, Egyptian intelligence learned his whereabouts. On the morning of August 5, 1974, Ibrahim found intelligence officers standing over him. After searching the house, they found a wireless device and the secret code that Ibrahim had used. Ibrahim was arrested, and 3 members of the Egyptian intelligence force waited the place for Enshra. At that time, Enshra was in the arms of Mossad officer Abu Yaqub until the time came for her return to Egypt on an Italian plane, specifically Flight 791 on August 24, 1974. Enshra arrived at Cairo International Airport, but she was surprised that her husband Ibrahim was not at the airport, so she took a taxi to return to the house by herself. Feeling upset and sad, she knocked on the door and her 3 children opened it. Enshra entered, feeling upset and asking where their father was, and they told her that he had traveled to the country. In that moment, Enshra understood that something had happened to Ibrahim, and suddenly intelligence officers appeared, arresting Enshra on charges of espionage of the enemy and betrayal of the homeland. At the time, Mossad was waiting for a message from Ibrahim. They were surprised by a message no one had anticipated, a message from Egyptian intelligence saying, "Stop your messages, Spy and his wife have fallen." Ibrahim and his wife Enshra were sentenced to death by hanging, and the sentence was carried out on Ibrahim on January 16, 1977, who laughed hysterically and before he was executed said he was regretful and cried out, saying, "Forgive me, Lord," and then repeated the testimony and smoked a cigarette and died hanged. As for Enshra, rumors say that Israel pressured Sadat to soften the sentence, and indeed, Sadat granted her a presidential pardon to complete the peace deal between him and Israel. Enshra appeared with Samir Sabri on his famous program in Maspero, saying she regretted and resumed praying and drawing closer to God to forgive her sin. But in a secret deal, there was talk of a prisoner exchange, and Enshra went with her 3 children to Israel. There, she took Israeli citizenship and converted to Judaism and changed her name from Enshra to David. And her children are Rafi, Yossi, and Chaim. According to the latest news from the Israeli newspaper Badiot Aharonot, Enshra and her children were living in the middle of Israel. Enshra was working cleaning a women's bathroom in the city of Holon, and Mohammed or Chaim worked as a night guard at one of the factories. As for Nabil, he couldn't stand living in Israel and married a Jewish girl and emigrated with her to Canada, where they worked in a laundromat. After many years, Adil or Rafi created a YouTube channel talking about his mother, who was the mastermind behind every step, and he said about his father that he was the smartest Egyptian spy and managed to outsmart Raphael Hagan with his intelligence. As for his mother, she was the best photographer. Adil would tell his story while regretting and wishing to return to Egypt, and he would always start his speech in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. However, he could not return and died in 2020 after a struggle with cancer, and Enshra passed away afterward at the age of 87 in Tel Aviv, and she was buried in the Jewish manner after a long struggle with depression.